Hello there, I am Man in Yellow and welcome to another short guide video. In this one we will be going over mobility or movement, whichever one you prefer calling it, and we will kind of be looking at 4 different main points which are the most important when looking at movement in my opinion. So these are the things that you should be asking yourself or considering when you're looking at movement. The first one is, how long does it take for my phobia to become relevant, and that is in my opinion the most important one. Then the second one is, does the extra radius on my one hit zone matter? The third one is, am I bringing too many of one mobility type? And the fourth one is, can I reposition my phobies and have them support each other, which can also be very important, and also whether it matters. So we will just be going through these one by one. So how long does it take for my phobia to become relevant? This is fairly easy to figure out, because when a phobia becomes relevant, it's usually when it can take the first or second point. It's usually when they reach a point of the map that is like important, and that is very often the middle of the map here. So on this map, it would mainly be somewhere around here. Once you reach that stage, you are starting to get your phobia to be relevant. On some other maps, it may look very differently, of course, because the relevant zones can be like completely divided or something. Like up here, both of these sides are relevant, and the middle isn't really as relevant most of the time, unless one player very easily takes it and then gets away with it, but most of the time that's not really a big problem. You're mainly fighting for either one of these sides where one player will go aggressive and the other will be defending. So you kind of have to look at the map and figure out when is a phobia relevant to the game, and it also depends on the state of the game. Like if the opponent is sitting all the way back, actually this isn't a great example, but maybe here, if the opponent is sitting all the way back here with their phobies, then your phobia isn't relevant when it's here anymore. Like normally a phobia would be relevant at here, but you would need it to go further forward before it becomes relevant if the opponent is sitting very far back. So here I would say that a phobia becomes relevant when it reaches around the middle of the map. So if we take something like a stabby in here and we just move it like we would, so this would be turn 1, right, for the stabby, and then this would be turn 2 for the stabby. And once it reaches the second turn here, I believe it starts becoming relevant, and that is because it is of course able to hit so much stuff from right here. Like this is the double hit zone, and then the single hit zone looks something like this, right? Something like that, I believe. But that is kind of what you have to be looking at. You have to think about, when does my phobia become relevant, and like how much does it matter that it may be delayed by a turn or so, because sometimes it doesn't really matter much if it's delayed, but other times it can matter a lot if you like arrive too late to a fight or something like that with your phobia. So that is what you have to take into consideration the most. On small maps, of course, you will see that slow phobies are often very, very good. And that is because if you just look at slow phobies, they get way more stats to compensate for them being slower. So a faster phobia will be way more flexible most of the time, whereas a slower phobia will have much higher stats or a way more powerful ability compared to the mobile ones. So a good example of this could be comparing Spot with Bomangles. Now we can see Spot has almost 500 attack. These are the same level, by the way, so they should be equal. It has almost 500 attack. Bomangles has almost, it has 600, a bit more than 600. But then again, Spot has lobbing, so let's just say their attacks are around equal. But Bomangles still has almost 1000 more health than Spot, so it's still way, way, way more powerful in terms of just purely fighting. But what you're of course trading away there is the ability to move quickly. So you have to consider whether the quick movement would matter for you. And here something like a stabby or Bomangles will probably be very good early on, because you get high stats and they are very quickly available. If we instead look at a large map such as Magnificent here, a stabby to reach the furthest point or one of the further points into the map, this would be the furthest of course, but let's just say it wants to reach this point up here. It would take it 1 turn, 2 turn, 3 turn, 4 turn, and then on the 5th turn it could move there and maybe have attacked once on the way, right? So it would take a very long time for the stabby to actually go all the way up here, whereas something like a snowball could do 1 move here, 2 move here on turn 1, and then on turn 2 it would be able to take this. So it is much, much more valuable there. Even a 2 mover would be able to go here into here, right? So first off, you would be protecting this point and this point with your 2-mover, and then after that you would be moving up and taking this point, and you would then take this point. So in 3 turns you can accomplish way more than the stabby would do in 5. So it is very important to look at the mobility and consider, does it matter? Because just because a phobia is slow doesn't actually mean that it's bad on a large map either, but it's usually a bad opener if it takes too long for it to become relevant, which it would here. Like, if you want to take this point even just with a stabby, it takes it 3 turns to go there. That is a ridiculous amount of time early on. And to take this point without hitting lava tiles would take 4 turns. So stabby is just way too slow on a map like this. Of course, that doesn't always have to be the case. Once you get to the middle stages, you could go stabby, place it here, and then have it defend both of these points for you, while your other phobies are up here wreaking chaos upon the opponent, right? That could be a very cheap defensive option that would let you save up some keys for something larger maybe, or something like that. So you could still bring slower phobies, but you have to bring them when they make sense. You can't just throw a lot of them out on small maps, or like you would do on small maps. On large maps you can't just summon a stabby on turn 1. That is going to be very bad for you in most cases. Of course, that doesn't go for every large map in the game, because again, you have to look at when they become relevant. So if you go Bomangles here and put it on this disease tile, and then next turn put the Bomangles here, or even on this point, right? It is relevant in only 2 turns, despite this being a large map. So it is very, very good here, actually. Turrets are pretty good on this map, for example, alongside AoE also being very good, just because there is very little space to move on here. Like, this is almost like 2 small maps in one. Like, you feel like there's a large map on either side of this, and then this in here is just something that you don't really touch most of the time. At least that's my experience here. So you kind of just want to be looking at your maps and figuring out, like, how much does the mobility actually matter for me? The second point is very simple. It's just, does the extra run range on my one-hit zone matter? And that is like super easy to understand. Like, if we say we have a phobie sitting on this tile, the one-hit zone will be like, and it has 2 range, right? The one-hit zone will be out here. And then if it was a Jin Sting instead, the one-hit zone would be out here, because it would be able to move and then hit 1 tile further in, right? So you kind of have to think about that at times, because if the opponent is setting up some combo, or if they just have like a lot of return power, then you want to make sure that you don't have to slowly move up, because that risks you just getting hit for like a very large amount of power in 1 turn. So you kind of have to figure that out also, but that is usually one of the less relevant points. And then the third one, am I bringing too many of one mobility type? Then will my phobies end up cluttering when I try to attack, or will I have 2 weak stats? And that is very important to look at also. You kind of have 3 different types of like mobilities. You have 1 movement phobies, which are very slow. We have 2 move mobility phobies, which are pretty fast. They're not like the fastest thing, but they're fast enough to compete on every map. And then we have 3 movement phobies, which are extremely mobile. Those are like hyper mobile phobies. So you kind of want to think about this, not only because of when they will be taking points and stuff like that. That's kind of what I already covered in the first point there. But you also have to think about it when attacking. So if we said we had a snappy sitting here, a stabby sitting here, and a murderwing sitting here, and the opponent had a spot here, then you would in theory have enough power to kill the spot up here, but you wouldn't actually have enough space for it, because the snappy would walk here, the stabby would walk here, and then the murderwing would not have any like tile to stand on to actually attack this. So you wouldn't even be able to kill the spot sitting up here with these 3 phobies in that position. If instead this snappy was a Jin Sting, and then we had the same other phobies up here, you would actually be able to kill the spot, because the Jin Sting would move here to hit, the stabby would move here to hit, and then the murderwing would move here to hit. So you would be able to kill the spot if you had more mobility there, which is something you kind of have to figure out. It depends both on which map you're on your collection, and what the opponent is doing, which is why it can be kind of hard to figure out. But you have to find a balance between fast and slow phobies, and this is especially important for small maps. On large maps you often bring 2 movement phobies mainly, and then maybe 1 or 2 slower phobies, sometimes no slower phobies. Sometimes you only play with very fast phobies and then just normal 2 movement phobies on large maps. But on small maps, it's very, very, very important to find the balance there. Because if you bring too many slow phobies, you would end up with kind of what you saw up here, where I wouldn't be able to kill an enemy because they want to stand on the same point. It can also be even worse, where you have like a phobie sitting here and one of your other phobies is locked back here because you can't move out for some reason. Like maybe they have a phobie sitting here and a phobie sitting here that are threatening your stabby if it tries to move out or something. And then your bow mangles would never be able to move if you had like 2 turrets sitting here. So you have to very much think about that so that you don't end up kind of like having all of your phobies just bunched up. But you also have to think about it the other way around. You don't want to bring only mobile phobies, because if we only have fast 2 movement phobies here, we are going to end up with just having way too little stats to actually fight the opponent. So like if I go in here and I have like a cassowary, a murder wing, a ginseng, and a daisy, and the opponent is sitting back there with unbearable stabby, innocuous, and a bomb or something, I will never be able to walk up to them. I'm not going to be able to go aggressive and actually kill their things, simply because they have way more stats than me, so I will just get crushed if I ever try to fight them. And that is why you kind of need to find an in-between somewhere where you kind of end up overwhelming the opponent in some form of category. Either you end up with more stats than them, or you end up being fast enough that you can outmaneuver them, or you just like bank for something big and kill them. Kind of whatever one works the best against the opponent, what the opponent is doing. And then the final one is just, can I reposition my phobies and have them support each other? And if not, does it actually matter? So there are several like different kind of situations you can look at here. A good one here would be if we have a, if we have a stabby here on this map sitting somewhere down here, a phobie up here would have a very hard time supporting it. So let's say we have stabby sitting here and we have another phobie, let's just say Bowmangles here. He will not be able to walk down and actually hit anything that is threatening the stabby unless you have destroyed these blocks maybe. Then there might be some like weird situation where you can do it. Whereas if this was something like a cassowary, maybe you could run around and jump onto an opponent, or maybe you would destroy this block and it would be able to a lot easier go down and support it. So you have to like very much look at that sometimes, but other times it may just not matter, so you shouldn't focus too much on it. On large maps this also becomes way more apparent, like if you have too many slow phobies, or if you position incorrectly so that all of your phobies are up here and down here, they will not be able to support each other if the opponent just moves in with all of their phobies. So let's say the opponent has like one large group of phobies sitting here, and you're like phobies are split up, so you have 3 phobies up here and 4 down here. If they just take all of their phobies and run at you here, like they just move in all out with their big bunch of phobies here, these phobies are going to die. And then these phobies up here will not be able to come down here fast enough to actually help them. So you will just end up losing half your team. And that can happen if your phobies aren't mobile enough. It could also happen if you just miss position, but most of the time it happens because people bring too slow phobies, and that is like a thing you kind of have to watch out for. Anyway, those are pretty much all of the points I wanted to cover. The only other thing you can really think about is, should I bring Gravedigger? Because Gravedigger can allow you to bring a lot of slow phobies together, despite like the map limitations, because you are able to manipulate the map. So here you would sometimes have a hard time having the phobies support each other, because like if your Bowmangles is sitting here and you have a stabby sitting here, and the opponent then goes all in on this Bowmangles, the stabby can only move here and hit once. If you have instead destroyed this block with a Gravedigger, it can straight up hit twice, and you may be able to kill something that you otherwise would not. And that looks kind of whatever with only getting 1 hit when I draw it like that, but maybe you have like 2 or 3 phobies sitting at the bottom that get 1 hit less each, and then suddenly it's a very large amount of damage you're missing out of because of the map structure, and Gravedigger can help you make up for that. So Gravedigger can be very important there. That's kind of why Gravedigger is so incredibly powerful, because it has so much utility in making sure that your phobies can help each other, and it makes your team more coherent most of the time. And plus it also just means that you can kind of disrupt the opponent's team. So like if the opponent is sitting on like the tension right here and you're fighting up here, and they have some phobies that want to go in here and attack you, sometimes you could just like place a block here and then keep on fighting them up here, and they would not be able to support their phobies, so you just force them back. So Gravedigger can kind of do both things, which is why it's so fantastic. But that is kind of like a side piece. But essentially just look at these 4 things when you are looking at the mobility and what you're bringing, and this will also kind of help you a lot with openers. You want to go into like, whenever there's a new map rotation, if you haven't played on the maps before, you want to go in here into the practice against AI stuff, and you just want to look at the map and then ask yourself, how long does it take for my phobie to get to a relevant position? And how long does it take for it to get to the furthest position on the map? So if I'm blue player here, or player 1, whatever you want to call it, the first like relevant position with a stabby or with another phobia is usually somewhere around here. But then the first point you're going to reach could be any of these. So you can reach a point in 3 turns no matter where you go with a stabby. Whereas if you look at a larger map, of course, it will take way longer, so you can't bring stabby. That is kind of the conclusion you have to come to, so you have to bring something faster. And then you ask yourself, how fast does it have to be? Because maybe you want to be bringing snowball here just to take this turn 1, but maybe you want to save the snowball so that you can hit something. It kind of depends on the map a lot. Here I don't think you really need the snowball as much, because it's not that common that you actually get to snipe something, which is why snowball is such a common player 1 opener here. Even player 2 at times uses snowball a lot. So that is what you have to look at. Snowball is a kind of specific one, because on some maps you want to keep it for vault sniping. Rise to Stardom is a map where I would keep the snowball around. Taking this point up here or even down here with snowball turn 1 is, in my opinion, a pretty bad thing to do on this map, because you would much rather save it for like when the opponent moves in and tries to fight you, and then you just surprise bring a snowball and kill one of their phobies that they otherwise wouldn't have lost. That is a lot more, that has a lot more worth than taking a point early on. It has to be like, you have to just look at the map and figure that kind of stuff out. And that's something that kind of comes with experience. But now that I've told you to do it, like, go in here and do that when you see new maps. That's a very smart thing to do, to figure out like how fast you can get to stuff. And you can also look at like, if we destroy this block with Gravedigger, then suddenly our stabby reaches this point a lot faster. So normally it would take 1, 2, 3 turns for my stabby to reach it. Instead, if this block is destroyed, it takes 1, 2 turns. So that can actually matter a lot if you destroy that block. You kind of just have to essentially figure that stuff out yourself though. I can't really go through every map and tell you what to do against every type of opponent, because the opponents will play differently also. So that is, you can't really make a handbook for what to do on every map, because the opponent will change what you want to do. Anyway, that was all I wanted to go over. I hope this is also helpful to someone, and I will see you guys in the next guide video. Bye.